Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici. Welcome my friends. My name is Vincenzo and welcome to my channel. And the channel is Fountain Pen Therapy. I've been going on a Chinese pen binge lately. There's a lot of pens out there that I was curious about. And this Tramol company is coming like gangbusters, and they have all kinds of offerings that I do want to mention. I've kind of reviewed already a few, and this Tramol Cream I think is a beautiful, beautiful pen. And don't let the light color of this pen fool you. This is not cheap plastic. This feels like a Mont Blanc. It has resin that feels like a Mont Blanc resin. It's got some depth, it's got some weight. So stay tuned. Does it give me the writing experience that I would hope for? Well, you know what, folks? My review is coming up. Okay, so we're going to take a closer look at this pen, and as promised, I'm going to try to provide you better macro shots of the pen so you can appreciate this resin. Now, you must not be fooled, because upon first sight you got the feeling that this is perhaps very cheap plastic, similar to what you would see, for example, in a Jinao, maybe 82 or something like that, or an 80, but it's not. It's a very nice resin. Now, they describe it as Alexandrite resin, but I can assure you there's some depth to this. The feel, you can almost sense, it's a little bit like touching a Mont Blanc. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that this is a Mont Blanc, but when you feel that precious resin of Mont Blanc, well, it's the same feeling that you have when you touch this pen. So it's got a very, very nice resin, okay, very nice trimmings, and it's got that finial with the coffee bean. So it's got a coffee bean finial there, which is really, really nice. It's got a nice clip. The clip is stiff, semi-functional, I would say. You can see the band there, very nicely done. There's Tramol written on it. And then there is Milk Coffee Series. Okay, there's really, what's disappointing is there's really no name to this pen. I guess we have to refer to it as the Tramol Cream. That appears to be the name that AliExpress gives it. It opens up in 1, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, so 1 3/4 turns, and you have a choice of nibs. This came, believe it or not, with a Bach nib, with a Yowo nib. Now, I just want to interrupt the video right here, because you will see that throughout the video, and I didn't want to restart the video all over again, but I was a little bit misled by the advertising in terms of the identity of the nibs. Okay, here's the story. The choice of nibs you have is this kind of generic iridium point, or the Bach nib. So you don't have and this generic iridium point nib is a cheap Yowo. It's made by Yowo, and that's why it has a Yowo nib section. And you will see later on in the video that I replace this nib with a Yowo nib, under the belief that the choice you had was with Yowo or this one. But that's not right. I hope I'm not confusing you. This is the Yowo nib, but it's the cheap generic one, and you can upgrade it to a Bach nib, okay, for roughly $20 more. So that's the correction. So from now on, you'll understand that I may be making some some errors during the review, but the upgrade. But you can certainly upgrade the nib because of the section to either a more expensive Yowo, or you can order it with a Bach, and then the section will be different. The beauty of that is that if you want to, and I mentioned that later on, you don't need to buy if you have plenty of Yowo nibs with the section, then you don't need to spend the $20 more for the Bach, which has a different section, but just buy this cheap one and then replace it with a Yowo nib full with the section. I hope I've made things clear, or maybe I haven't, but there you have it. We're going to resume the video. There you go. So I thought I'd test the original nib here. This is an extra fine, nothing spectacular, generic, Chinese kind of a nib. We'll see if that nib performs as badly as I think it will, because I'm poised to replace that nib with a Yowo nib, which I will do, especially if the writing experience doesn't turn out well. And maybe I will just show you what this pen looks like with a Yowo nib. Why don't we do that? So there you have it. It is a cartridge converter system, cheap cartridge converter, very plasticky. There is metal there, so I don't, metal on plastic, which is always something you need to be aware of. I don't think you can eyedropper this pen for obvious reasons. In terms of feel, we'll go to a larger angle to take a look at that in a second. Okay, so we have a wider view here, so you can appreciate a little bit what the comfort level is of this pen in your hand. As you can see, it is a little bit smallish, but it's enough. I think very comfortable. I have big hands, and I don't see a problem there, a major problem at all. But the good news is that this pen just posts well. You got to kind of insert it there, but once posted, the balance is absolutely perfect on this pen. It becomes a little bit bigger, and I got to tell you, trust me, that resin is really, really, really nice. So don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. And there's a lot further. I think there's a kind of a lemonish yellow version as well. So there's a couple of versions. I like this little pen. It's got some nice weight to it, and especially with the cap on, very, very nice. Now, let's take a look at what that inner cap looks like, just to see whether or not I see anything of interest. Yeah, there's a little bit of a step there. So when it locks in, we can see kind of right to the bottom. So I'm not sure how good this is going to be, but there is a little bit of a step. So that's good news. And there you have it. So that's the pen both in and out. What we'll do is we will do some pen and size comparisons next. Okay, for the size comparison, here they are. I had some difficulty kind of trying to choose pens to compare it to. And So I don't have now. It is obvious that this the pen in question, Tramol Cream, is a Pro Gear inspired pen. But I wasn't sure whether it was a Pro Gear, regular size or a slim, because I don't own either one of them. I do know that the Jinao 82 is a Pro Gear slim imitation. So, and when I took some measurements and did some comparison and some research, this is indeed a Pro Gear regular. Now, one can even say it's a little bit bigger, depending on which site you visit, and the measurements kind of vary. And I wish I would have had one. It's on my list, but it's not a priority for me, the Pro Gear. So there you have it. But it does, so you could see it's obviously bigger than the Slim and bigger than the Jinao 82. This is the Jinao 9016, and it's bigger than that. This is the Ranga Abhimanyu, regular sized one, equivalent. Take a look at that. It's bigger than my Aurora Optima, and it's just slightly smaller than this Pilot Falcon. So there you have the pens capped. So here you have the pens uncapped, and you can see that where this pen stands, just slightly smaller than the Falcon, a little bit smaller than the Aurora. So the Aurora kind of it becomes a little bit bigger uncapped. It is there's some significant difference with the Abhimanyu, the Ranga, a little bit bigger than the 9016 and much bigger than the Slim or the Jinao 82, as you can see that. So there are the pens uncapped. Here are the pens posted. It's a good poster, and posted is a funny thing. I'm not even sure why we do this, the reviewers, because take a look at this Abhimanyu. It doesn't post very well, and it becomes kind of a clunky poster. But so it all depends on your tastes. I think what's important is the pen, whether the pen does post, and whether it becomes comfortable in your hands, and whether or not it compares with others in terms of size posted, I think is a little bit less relevant, but that's just a editorial comment on my part. As you could see, the pen, when posted, is very, very comfortable, and I think that's what's important for you, for those who insist on posting the pens. So there you have it. That's the pen and size comparison. I'll put up some measurements. Those are important for you, so you can compare that with the gear and with your Pro Gear if you have one, and then we'll do a writing sample. Okay, we're back for the writing sample. First of all, the ink. The ink that I've chosen is this Van Dieman's, one of my favorite ink brands. And by the way, I do have a discount code in my description, Fountain Pen Therapy, and you get a very nice discount. Van Dieman's Harvest Peanut Brittle. What does it look like? Well, here it is, Van Dieman's Peanut Brittle. I figure that it does match pretty nicely with this creamed coffee look on that pen. So there you have the ink. In terms of the paper that we'll be using, well, I'm going to stick to my trusty Tomo River, which is my favorite paper, as you should know by now. And I've started this brand new notebook, by the way, by Galen. It's kind of plain paper, Tomo River, probably Sanson, because it is a recent purchase, Sanson paper. They provide some nice guide sheets. I figured that I would put my samples or my sampling in this book because it will, I can keep them, so I'll have all the samples in one writing sample book. So this is going to be my writing sample book from now on. There you have it. Okay, so I'm going to post this pen because I really like it when it's posted. It gives that weight. So this is the Tramol Cream. That's it, really. The nib is a generic number 6 steel, extra fine. The ink is Van Dieman's Peanut Brittle. Now, I can tell you right off the bat that I don't like this nib. I think two things come into play. One, it's an extra fine, and I don't really like extra fine nibs. It is not scratchy. You know, for an extra fine, there's some wetness there. Yeah, if you press, you can squeeze something out of this pen, which leads me to believe that if I do some fine-tuning, I can maybe get this pen to write to my liking. But if you like extra fine, it's okay. But if you give me a minute, actually just a few seconds for you, I will be right back and I'll show you the difference. Okay, so I'm back. What I did is I used just this gauge number 4.4 to just kind of open up a little bit the tines, and use this these pads to kind of just grind it a little bit and soften it up a little bit, and let's see what gives. So we'll do exactly the same thing and to give an example of the difference. So you can see the line width is much thicker now, just a little bit smoother. In its natural writing position. Okay, and then if I push it, it gives, it's still an extra fine. I have no illusions, but it is a little bit smoother in my view. So, and the little more ink is coming out. So if I write this again, ink, Van Dieman's Peanut Butter or Brittle. I mean, I haven't turned this into an extra fine into a fine, but I just find that the ink is a little bit darker, and maybe I'm not sure the camera is picking that up. So I played around with this nib. I don't like this nib. It's a generic iridium point, you know, that you find some of the cheaper Chinese pens. So, you know, Tramol doesn't have their own nibs, but I can tell you that I will replace this with a Yowo nib, and I'll show you what gives with the Yowo nib. Okay, so we're back. The good news is that the section is a Yowo nib section. So I removed that generic nib and I replaced it, just removed the section and replaced it with a kind of a generic Yowo. But this is a, is it a fine? No, yeah, it's a fine. So we're going to stick to fine. So we're going to have a good comparison. And we'll see what this, I haven't tested it. Hopefully this nib was tuned. So the nib now is a Yowo number 6 steel, And this is the fine. Yeah, the quality of the writing experience cannot be beat. It is a fine, but it's much smoother, needless to say, and I prefer it. Keep in mind that this ink is a fairly light ink, but the writing experience is quite different with this nib. But you can put an Asvine nib there, you can put a Majon nib in there. Experiment for those of you who are starting out. So let's get down to likes and dislikes. I like the build quality of this pen. I like that material, that resin. Very, very nice. I got to tell you, it's probably the best feature of this pen. I like the design is kind of copied. So some of you might believe that is a dislike. In terms of the nib, the generic nib is 2 on 10. So save your $20 and use whatever nibs you have but I really like the pen. The value of the pen without, and I put the exact numbers on the screen, but I believe it's around $40 as opposed to something like $60 if you get the Yowo nib. So that it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to buy the Yowo nib from them, because you can probably get it for $15 elsewhere. Or use another nib that you have. Okay, is it a go-to pen? About 7 on 10. For me, in a boardroom setting, probably a little too light and not as conservative as I would want it to be. But in an office setting, not a problem. In a boardroom setting, a little bit different. So that's just, my lawyering there. I don't want to go into a boardroom with my adversaries with a light pen. I want to go in there with a dark pen. But that's another story, or that's another subject for another day. So there you have it, folks. That's it. That's there you have it, folks, for my review. The Tramol Cream. Now, conclusions. Should this be a priority on your list of priorities of pens to purchase? Absolutely not. However, I did want to give you a sense of the great material. Again, I stress the resin on this pen. I understand why they focus on alexandrite. I'm not sure what that is exactly, but it sounds good. But it is a precious resin of some sort, because the feel, the weight, and the depth of that resin, in terms of feel anyway, is definitely something that you should explore. If you want to test what a Pro Gear would give you as a writing experience, I think this is a good alternative at $40 instead of $200, $300, or whatever the Pro Gears go for. I know now that I don't need to buy a Pro Gear, frankly. If I'm going to buy a Sailor, I'm going to look to that, King of Pen Sailor. That's what's on my list right now. And I can take this pen, replace it with maybe an even nicer nib, even a gold nib, and get the feel of what that Sailor nib would give me, and don't need to spend the $300. There you have it. But is it a priority for anyone? Should this be on your burning purchase list? No. You can do without it. You can do without it. But if you're thinking about buying it, here's where this review might come in handy for you. So there you have it. Grazie molto. Thank you very much for joining me. Please subscribe. If you like this video, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know, but explain to me why. And you know what, folks? Fountain pen therapy. Enjoy your pens. Buongiorno, buonasera, arrivederci.